Maine feels simple because it has permitless carry, but the legal landscape is shifting fast. A waiting period that was blocked is back in effect. Private sales are not as private as you think, and Maine has now added a new court order path that can take a gun owner from legal to prohibited fast. So by the end of this video, you will understand why a lot of Maine gun owners are furious. Chapter 1, Carry Baseline. If you are 21 or older and you are not legally prohibited from having a firearm, Maine generally allows you to carry open or concealed without getting a Maine concealed handgun permit. Maine also has an 18 to 20 lane, but it is narrower. If you are 18, 19, or 20, the permitless concealed handgun rule is not the same unless you are active duty in the United States Armed Forces or National Guard, or you were honorably discharged for either one, and you are not otherwise prohibited. That age rule is about carrying, not buying. Buying is where Maine has changed the most recently, so do not tune out before Chapter 5. Maine concealed handgun permits still matter for reciprocity, travel, certain public land rules, and cleaner interactions with law enforcement. If you are carrying under a permit, keep the permit with you, because if an officer demands to see it, you need to display it. Maine has no statewide magazine capacity limit like some other blue states. The trap in Maine is different. It is not usually the magazines. It is the place, the vehicle, the transfer, or the court order. Chapter 2, Prohibited Places. Permitless carry does not mean you can carry everywhere. The first major trap is school property. Maine generally bans firearms on school property, and that does not just mean inside the school building. It can also include the pickup lane, driveway, parking lot, and school grounds. So if curbside pickup means you are still on a public road, that is one question. But if curbside pickup means you pulled onto school property, Maine does not give every parent a broad everyday pickup drop-off pass just because the gun stays in the car. The vehicle exception Maine lists is narrow: unloaded, locked in the vehicle, stored in a closed container, zipped case, or locked firearms rack, and tied to specific school board authorized events. Federal law adds a separate 1,000-foot school zone rule. A Maine concealed handgun permit can matter for that federal license exception. Without the federal permit exception, the federal vehicle lane requires the firearm unloaded and locked in a container or locked rack. Colleges and universities can create separate policy problems, so do not assume Maine's normal carry rule answers every campus building, parking lot, dorm, or event. Courthouses are another hard line. Unauthorized possession of a firearm in a courthouse is its own crime in Maine, and having a concealed handgun permit is not a defense. Jails and correctional facilities are restricted too. Maine does list a locked vehicle exception there if the firearm is stored out of sight in a locked motor vehicle, but do not treat that like permission to carry inside. Alcohol is one of Maine's biggest traps. A restaurant is not automatically off limits, but if a licensed drinking establishment posts against firearms, carrying there can become criminal possession. And if you carry there while under the influence, a permit does not save you. In Maine, not every no gun sign works like the alcohol establishment's posted rule. If a private property owner, manager, or person in control tells you to leave, leave. Do not turn a carry issue into a trespass issue by arguing. Airports are layered. The hard line is the TSA checkpoint in sterile area. If you are flying with a firearm, that is a separate federal and airline process. Unloaded, locked in a hard-sided case, and declared to the airline first. Airline curbside pickup and drop-off are different from the TSA checkpoint in sterile area, but follow posted airport rules and do not bring a firearm into secured and screened areas. Also, before relying on any vehicle storage exception, check the rule for that specific place. Federal postal regulations still say you cannot carry or store firearms on Postal Service property, except for official purposes. That means the building and the postal parking lot are both part of the problem. The recent Texas ruling did block enforcement for the plaintiffs and present or future FPC and SAF members, but do not treat that as universal nationwide pass for everyone else. Now, quick question for Maine carriers. Did you know that the post office parking lot can be treated differently than a normal parking lot? Let me know in the comments. Chapter 3, Vehicle Laws and Getting Pulled Over. Sometimes the vehicle gives you a storage lane.
and sometimes it does not. And even when the gun is legal in the vehicle, Maine still has rules for how it is loaded, who can access it, and what you have to say during the traffic stop. Storage also matters around kids. If a child under 16 gets access to a loaded firearm and misuses it, uses it in a crime, or fires it, Maine can treat that as a criminal storage problem. Work parking lots have their own lane too. If you have a valid Maine concealed firearm permit, your employer generally cannot ban you from keeping a firearm locked in your vehicle as long as it is not visible. Maine's loaded rule is broader than just a round in the chamber. If ammo is in an attached magazine, clip, or cylinder, Maine treats that as loaded. That matters because Maine treats handguns and long guns differently in vehicles. A loaded handgun may be lawful in the vehicle if you are already in the legal carry lane we covered earlier. But loaded rifles, loaded shotguns, and loaded crossbows are a different problem. Maine generally does not let you ride around with those in or on a vehicle unless a specific exception applies. Now, imagine blue lights come on. Now you're sitting in a traffic stop. If you are carrying a concealed handgun without a valid permit and you are arrested, detained, or stopped in a routine traffic stop, Maine requires you to immediately tell the officer that you are carrying. That does not mean give a speech. It means do not make the officer discover it on their own. If you are carrying under a permit, it is not an immediate duty to inform, but keep the permit with you and display it if law enforcement demands it. Maine's permit statute says permit holders must have the permit in their immediate possession when carrying and must display it on demand. Either way, hands visible, move slowly, do not reach without explanation, and follow lawful commands. The goal is not to win a roadside debate. The goal is to go home without turning a traffic stop into a firearm case. And all of this assumes that you are legally allowed to possess the gun in the first place. Some people are not. Chapter 4: Prohibited People. If you are prohibited, none of the carry talk matters. Maine's prohibited person rules cover obvious categories, but also ones people do not understand until it's too late. Serious criminal convictions can make possession illegal. Certain domestic violence convictions can make possession illegal, and certain juvenile adjudications can matter. Qualifying protection orders can matter. Mental health commitments and court findings can matter too. Being a fugitive definitely matters. Federal categories like unlawful drug use, unlawful immigration status, dishonorable discharge, and renouncing citizenship can matter too. The problem is that some people don't even know that they are prohibited. They think, I never went to prison, or that was a long time ago, so I'm fine now. Well, maybe you are and maybe you're not. A domestic case, a protection order, a mental health proceeding, or an old conviction can change your gun rights even if you do not think of yourself as a criminal. Protection orders are especially important in Maine. A court can order a person to give up their firearms, and if that order applies, the deadline can be fast, sometimes within 24 hours after service, or sooner if the court says so. Maine already has a yellow flag style weapon restriction process going back to 2019, but Maine has now added a separate ERPO system, the Extreme Risk Protection Orders, often called red flag orders. Courts have been accepting those petitions since February 23, 2026. The older process is more police and medical driven. Law enforcement gets involved first, a medical practitioner assesses that person, and then the court can approve weapon restrictions. ERPO creates a more direct court path. Certain family or household members, law enforcement officers, or law enforcement agencies can petition the court directly. If the court grants the order, it can block the person from purchasing, possessing, receiving, or controlling dangerous weapons. Emergency ERPOs can be issued without prior notice if the court finds immediate and significant danger. The emergency order can last up to 14 days, and after a hearing, a full ERPO can last up to 1 year. So what happens to the guns you already own if you get red flagged? Well, upon service of the order, the respondent must immediately give those weapons to the law enforcement officer serving the order. If police show probable cause that the person will not surrender them or has not surrendered them, the court can issue a search warrant allowing law enforcement to seize them. So here's the question. Are ERPOs a necessary safety tool, or do they give the government or family too much power before the final hearing? Let me know where you land. Chapter 5: Sales, Transfers, and Waiting Periods. Maine does not have a permit to purchase system like some states. It is not built around a firearm owner ID card. At a licensed dealer, you still fill out federal paperwork, go through a background check, and follow federal age rules. At a dealer, rifles and shotguns are generally 18 and up. Handguns and other firearms are generally 21 and up. Maine now has a 72-hour waiting period. A court paused it for a while, but in April 2026, the First Circuit vacated that injunction, so the law became enforceable again while the case continues. The case is not over, but for now, if the sale is covered, the seller generally cannot hand over the gun until 72 hours after the deal is made. Private sale is not automatically a loophole, and it is not law-free. In Maine, if a private sale happens at a gun show or because of an advertisement, the seller generally has to run the transfer through an FFL background check. Family sales, certain collector-to-collector, curio, or relic sales, and antique firearms are treated differently. But a truly private, non-advertised, person-to-person sale generally does not trigger that Maine FFL background check rule. And if no state or federal background check is required, Maine's 72-hour waiting period generally does not apply either. But no matter how private the sale is, you still cannot intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly sell or transfer a firearm to someone who is prohibited from possessing one. You also can't buy a gun from an FFL as a front for someone else. A true gift is different, but the buyer must be the actual buyer and the recipient must be legally allowed to possess it. Maine's lessons is not that carry is impossible, but owning a gun and comfortably carrying one every day are two different things. Jane's going to show you how we make everyday carry easier to actually live with.
Hey, if you made it this far, you probably care about doing things right. If you've tried carrying in gym shorts or sweats, it just never feels quite right. Waistband moves, holster shifts, it's fine, but it's not dialed. That is why we built Relaxed Fit Tactical. Our shorts lock onto an inner belt, so your holster clips to a hidden belt, not just fabric. Same setup, same draw, just more comfortable. So if you carry every day, this just makes sense. Links below.